Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 99 of the Defion Productions podcast. I'm your host, Don Rinaldi, the hardest working nobody in Bitcoin. We are one episode away from our 100th episode, which we will be filming in 2 days. It will not be filmed on my channels. It's going to be a part of the big Emerge-a-thon that we're having in our studio. It's a 24-hour podcast. My podcast will be around 3 o'clock. It'll be on the Emerge Creators YouTube. I'm going to post it all. It's on my socials, but I'm going to repost everything today, tomorrow, and then Saturday morning. So you can catch my 100th episode live during the live 24-hour podcast. I'll be on from 3 to 4, and then sporadically I'll be making appearances throughout the 24-hour podcast-a-thon as well. But today, we're going to talk Bitcoin. We're going to talk MicroStrategy. We're going to talk markets. We're going to talk everything that's been going on the last 7 days, which has been a lot. So we'll start with the charts. We'll take a look at where Bitcoin's sitting right now. After hitting an all-time high, a new all-time high last week at about 123 and some change, we're sitting at 112,687.93. Total market cap 2.24 trillion. Ethereum also going down with everything else here in the market at 4,268, XRP 291, and as you can see going down, a lot of red in the markets outside of the stables. Total market cap of crypto is at 3.82 trillion. Fear and greed is right directly in the middle at 50. And looking at the dominance, we got Bitcoin dominance sitting at 58.6%. Ethereum dominance at 13.5%. And then you can see over here in the corner that this is kind of what the markets are waiting for, kind of on pause, if you will, until tomorrow when Fed Chair Powell will speak at Jackson Hole. And depending on what he says will definitely depend on where the market's going to go into the weekend. Most betting markets, I think it's at about 85%, have the Fed making at least a 25 basis point cut in September. I would imagine that anything he says that would make it seem like that's not going to happen would be really bad. And everything that he probably says that's going to be gearing us towards that will probably have us, I would assume, moving back in a positive direction. A 10% move. I mean, we're at 124 going down to 112. It's about a 10% drop in a typical Bitcoin bull market. That's not really a big drop. I know it seems like a lot, when you're talking about a 5-figure drop in less than a week, but, percentage wise, it's actually a very shallow drop. It's not really that big of a deal, at least at this stage. All right, let's jump into some of our stories. This one I found here I thought was really good. Luke Groman, belated Nixon closing. That was a couple of days ago, the 54-year anniversary of the coming off the gold standard speech by President Nixon. The SPX priced in gold, which is blue down here, and the SPX priced in USD, which is red here, since 1971 when Nixon closed the gold window. So pricing it in gold down here, it's been basically flat for 54 years. But priced in US dollars, that's where you see the nominal gains that we've had the last 50 years in the S&P 500. There was a comment here. Can't get to the comments because I'm not signed in. But there was a comment that made a good point that the blue did not take into consideration the compounding effects. But even still, when you add in the compounding effects, it's nowhere near where the USD value has been. But when you price it in gold, it's still significantly less because we have inflated away our dollar supply, and this chart kind of is a good cursor for us to look at to kind of see the big changes that we've had in our monetary system, monetary policies in the last half century plus. Next article here. This one is this is one that I preach a lot to people, especially in my day job. And when my day job and the Bitcoin thing kind of, coincide together. This is the one that I don't think enough people are talking about, and this is specifically to my generation. Generation X? Is that our generation? Is that what we're considered? We're not millennials. We're not boomers. We're Gen X, I think, is what we are. My generation, the upper 30s to the mid lower 50s, we have a retirement crisis, a significant retirement crisis. And these are some of the numbers that kind of bring that home. The 4% rule, which has been typically used in traditional finance markets for years. The 4% rule, when you have $1 million, that would equal to $40,000 a year, pulling from that $1 million of your nest egg of income. The median retirement savings, age 55 to 64, is about 200 grand. That's just $8,000 a year. Social Security facing 20 to 25% cuts by 2033. I've seen, when you go on the Social Security website, it has in blue by 2037, it may be 80% of what your expected number is going to be. So that kind of falls into line, being in that 20 to 25%. Inflation keeps eroding purchasing power. Millions are on track to retire in poverty. This isn't just a future problem. It's a looming economic crisis. And I think this is definitely going to be, in the next 20 years, a significant economic crisis that we are going to definitely see, because we're doing nothing to change and nothing to stop us from going right off a cliff when it comes to my generation being able to adequately retire. People are not saving, and the ones that are saving are not saving enough. Social Security is not going to be anywhere near enough to do anything of significance for somebody in retirement. And there's a far too great segment of my demographic that's going to be retiring with just Social Security because they don't have a pension, because they didn't save any money, because they're significantly still in debt. It's a huge problem. And it seems like, oh, that's 20 years away. Why are we talking about it? We can worry about it in 2 decades. We need to start doing something now, because this is going to spiral. It only gets worse. It doesn't get better. In the Bitcoin conversation, if you just think about, like, Bitcoin was created 16 years ago. Fast forward 16 years now, and we're right in the middle of that crisis. So it wasn't that long ago that Bitcoin was created and brought to us as a financial tool, as an opt-out to this scam, traditional debt-based U.S. Ponzi scheme. And before you know it, we're going to be 10, 15, 20 years into the future, and there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are not prepared to retire, that are not going to be prepared to stop working, or are going to be forced to continue to work, or their health or their wellness is going to not allow them to work, and they're just going to be in adjunct poverty. It's crazy. Rich, as somebody that did the right thing, was lucky enough to have a pension because you were a teacher, but also saved, and you're in a much more comfortable spot. There's going to be a lot of people in the next 10, 15, 20 years that are not going to be, and I hate to say lucky because it's more preparation than luck, but are not going to be in the same situation or scenario that you are.
Well, even people that I worked with, and again, I worked in public educations in New York State, so I have a New York State pension, which is one of the better pension funds around. But even the amount of people that are in my own union that have done nothing besides their pension, and they think that I don't think they understand how their pension works. So even those folks haven't adequately, many of the younger people that I would say that are younger than you and I, maybe 10 years younger, in their 30s, 40s, they have not been putting anything else aside in through any other means. So it's just like, well, the pension's there. And I'm like, that's not going to be enough when you consider inflation. And they're like, what? And I don't think they understand. Many of the people I work that I know that have pensions, even they're not thinking about how much. And then it's literally, we were talking about my son and I, who's 26, who's very politically savvy, and a lot of people wouldn't agree with him, but he pays attention to politics.
Financially astute, for sure, for his age.
Yeah, and he was saying, he's like, I'm not expecting Social Security because I'm 26. He's like, I don't think I'm gonna get anything. He goes, if it's anything, he says it's gonna be like pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, he will. That's the one thing that I will say that people, it's like, you say that especially in the Bitcoin community. I'll speak to this because it's relevant. There's like 2 sects of the Bitcoin community right now: the doom and gloomers, and then the ones who are just like saying that Bitcoin's going to eventually fix a lot of things, and it's not as bad as we say that it is. The doom and gloomers. It's like I will say that I on the doom and gloom side, there is a lot of things I believe, but the one thing that you just brought up that I don't, Social Security is never going to go to zero. As long as people are working, I think when he said pennies on the dollar, it's going to be something like
He
that.
was thinking like compared to what I get, like whatever
I
I'm
could
going to get.
I could see a world where you're getting 50%.
That's
I can
what
see
he
that.
said.
He's
Like it's not like he goes. It's not
It'll never
really
go to
enough for
zero.
most people to live off of already. He says,
Yeah.
and they're only going to get half. He said less than half if I could remember exactly the conversation. And I think he's probably, and I think you kind of assess that there's less people paying in.
For sure.
And we're going to have a draw. We're still in the middle of that boomer draw because they're, and then even my generation, which is going to probably because again, I'll be collecting, I'm going to take it at 62. So I'm not waiting until my late 60s. Because I learned from you that what's the average number of years people get after how many years they collect? 7? 7. So I'm like, why would I not get back some of what I've put in? So yeah, I definitely feel like there's going to be, like I'm good shape. I think the next generation is going to start seeing those cuts, and then I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a really we talk about the pensions, and there's really a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to the pensions. Because even the people that do have pensions, and it's less than 10% of all jobs, and a big portion of that 10% is made up from municipalities, teachers, firemen, cops. Like that's really where the pensions are now. There's no real private sector pensions per se anymore. Right. But a lot of people don't understand that those pensions don't have COLAs associated with them. So they don't realize that if you're doing nothing else except just relying on the pension, let's say you retire, let's say like a teacher, like a lot of teachers are retiring when they're 55, right? So you retire at 55 and they give you your pension, and it will be a significant amount of money when you retire because it's the best 3 years of your average of the 3 years, yada, 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 all that stuff. So like it's good. You can get by on that. It's really nice. But now fast forward to age 75 or age 80, and you're getting the same amount of money that you got 20 years ago, and yet the cost of goods and services have all doubled. And now you're significantly behind that. Now the pension is not really doing anywhere near what it did before. And now Social Security is only giving you 20% less or 30% less instead of 100, you're getting 70 or 80% of that. And you didn't save anything else. And now all of a sudden, instead of things getting better, now you have to cut back. Things are getting worse. You can't leave a legacy like you wanted to. You were taking trips the first couple of years of your retirement. Now you can't do that anymore because you can't. Things are more expensive and your money isn't going up. Your income isn't going up. It actually feels like it's going down because it's buying less. And I think 2020, what we saw with COVID, and that like acceleration of those couple years of like, oh my God, everything got more expensive fast, right? I think it was an experience that I don't think people really truly appreciated, but if people were paying attention, it was an invaluable experience for them to take a step back and say, wow, that's how fast something like that can happen. And that's how quickly I cannot be prepared for that. And the people that are working are blessed because they have the opportunity still to make up for that and get themselves in a better position. But if they were people that were retired during that experience, they couldn't do that. Right? Anybody that's been retired for 10 years that got hit in 2020, like it's too late. You can't go backwards unless they go pick up another job.
Most of the people that I know that are in that scenario that are probably 65 now, they went back to work in some capacity. Some of them, work 2 days a week. Even if it's their whatever, they're doing something. And I read an article and it was talking about like, the next generation in terms of people that are probably kids now. And they were talking about the kids that are like 5 and 6 now, like their grandparents and their parents were able to do things for them like 529s and put aside money for college and all those kinds of things because they had extra money. Because if they had a pension or if they had done well and they had Social Security, they were able, well, my money's going a little bit farther. I'm doing okay with this because I paid in and all that stuff. Yeah. So you know what? I'll put some money aside for my grandkids or my kids. And now that is significantly lower than it used to be, that percentage of the population that does that. And then the other thing that was in that article talked about too is that a lot of people that, they're starting to having to reverse mortgage their house because they need the value of the equity in their house. So now the house isn't being left to anyone. So, because by the time they get to that point, because people are living longer, so they start running out of money because, if you work for 40 years and you live for 20 or whatever in your retirement, you're going to exhaust a lot of that. So that was another thing that was like, that younger generation is going to get the double hit, that they're not going to get as much help from their parents and grandparents because their parents and grandparents aren't doing as well as those guys' parents and grandparents.
Yep. Agreed.
Oh, you're logging in?
Yeah, I'm trying to get in.
Hey, so while you're logging in, I'll stall some time here. I'm happy for you again. Saturday, we're doing our Emerge-a-thon on the Emerge Media Creators YouTube channel. All the podcasts that produce out of this building will be there, and I'm super excited. We realized last week when we were doing this that Don's going to hit his 100th episode that day, so we're excited that he gets to celebrate his 100th. You didn't do all 100 with me, but pretty close to it.
Yeah, we've done more than half.
Yeah.
Because our first year and change was in my basement, and in Troy's wherever he was doing it from.
And that really speaks a lot, because a lot of people that were doing the basement thing, usually they don't get past that 7-8 episodes. They kind of crash and burn after all. That just doesn't seem to be like it's going anywhere. Because you can't do, and obviously you got to focus on quality and stuff like that. And you guys kept pushing through. So, I mean, more credit to you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. While you were filling some time, I was trying to find this video. I was logging in. I want to show this really quick because I think this is a great video to explain why Bitcoin exists. It's a 2-minute and 20-second. Jeff Booth, if you don't follow Jeff Booth, if you're not watching Jeff Booth videos and you're a Bitcoiner, you're missing out. Jeff Booth is phenomenal. Jeff Booth says prices will fall forever under the Bitcoin standard as free markets drive efficiency. If you own Bitcoin, you're already part of the system. So let's watch this real quick.
Exactly the rate that those people go.
Wait, what? Why?
Because it's productivity. The productivity that we choose, the prices fall by that. They don't need the job anymore because prices keep falling and falling and falling.
Oh my God. Okay. See, it's another Jeff Booth mind-breaking moment.
The job that you think you need to pay for the artificial prices that are going up is only needed because of the artificial prices going up.
I know. Yeah.
It's not needed. You live in abundance. You continually live in. If prices kept falling, if prices fell by 5% a year, then 10% a year as the natural course, and then 15%.
Okay, but wait,
and
hold on. If people lived in abundance, what incentive would you have to build things, for example?
So there's always going to be things to solve.
Okay.
Always. In the free market, you get paid more than somebody else for creating value. How do you get paid? You get paid by creating value for somebody else.
Yeah.
The more people you create value for, the more you get paid. And then what happens? Somebody sees the value you're making, and they compete with you, and they remove your value, and you have to compete harder and harder to provide more value. And the output of that is all prices continue to fall. You win, they win, everyone wins. Because even if you weren't part of that equation, those people competing create value for you when prices are allowed to be in the free market. The only way you lose from that equation is if you live in a centralized market. The prices are artificially made to rise.
I see what you're saying.
Right? So then you'd lose your job. All prices are higher.
And you wouldn't be
and you don't know what to do.
And you wouldn't be able to.
So you turn to the government who's creating the problem and you say, save me.
Save me.
And they create a new program to save you. That where does money come from? From you.
Yeah.
In this world, you just get better and better and better. It is a perfect expression of humankind trading with each other in service of humankind.
That is...
And Bitcoin is imposing that discipline. If you own part of Bitcoin, you are already part of that system.
That is mind-blowing. So...
Great interview. Simply Bitcoin did with Jeff Booth. It's like a 2-hour interview, but that's a really good snippet to kind of like drive home the point of like, we've shown before, and obviously in the short term, I mean, in the last week, Bitcoin's dropped $10,000, But over the long term, when you look at the chart, and the chart's at a right angle, just like that, going up with choppiness in between, but basically going up, is you're pricing things against Bitcoin, and the price continues to go down cycle after cycle after cycle. The best example, and we've shown it on this podcast, is houses. I showed the example of a house in 2016, I think it was, what it was is the average home price in 2016 was like $200,000 or something like that, which was like 500 Bitcoin in 2016. And today the average price of a house is like $450,000 in the United States, which is like less than 4.5 Bitcoin. It's like right around 4 Bitcoin. So when you price things, and that's just an example of homes, when you price things in Bitcoin, the price goes down every single cycle. The price of things in the 2013 cycle were more than they were in the 2017 cycle, which was more than they were in the 2021 cycle, which is more than they were today in the 2025 cycle. When you look at the price of any goods and services, and even stocks, you can do the same looking at stocks and equities. Everything priced in Bitcoin was worth much more in the past, and it's less in Bitcoin terms now. Does that kind of make sense, Rich?
It does, and I like what he had to say. Like, I like that analogy. I like the human aspect of what he was trying to talk about with Bitcoin. That was a very, it's very intellectual or whatever, but philosophical. But I think that the big part of the Bitcoin is philosophical. I think the real Bitcoiners, from what I'm finding in the space, the people that aren't here, they're just popping in to the roulette table, they're the ones that are trying to be more like a renaissance in terms of the way they look at fiat. And I think that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hesitate to say this, but I feel it, so I'm gonna say it, and it'll probably make some people mad, especially newer Bitcoiners that maybe follow me when I say this. But I think that there is a section of Bitcoiners that feel that Bitcoin is here to change and make things better, and there's Bitcoiners here for that, and that's why we're here. And that's what we're trying to do. Then there's another section of Bitcoiners, and I feel like it's more the post-2020 Bitcoiners. Not all of them, but a lot of them are here for number go up. They're here to get rich. They're here to they get excited that they're gonna retire their bloodlines and all these things that people say. And again, it's good to want that, and I want that as well. But I think that they neglect the ethos of Bitcoin and why this was created, which Jeff Booth is talking about, all the good things that Bitcoin can do. Like we talked about in this podcast a couple podcasts ago, just like when the bombs were going back and forth between Israel and Iran, we talked about, like, on a Bitcoin standard that wouldn't be possible. Not to say that bombs wouldn't exist, but you wouldn't be throwing things around when you have a finite supply of money, and you can't just print things to infinity. You would have to be very, very conservative with how you spent and allocated the funds that you had. You can't just, spend money on a bomb, blow the bomb off, then print more money to make more bombs and just do it forever. Like, those are the types of things that happen in a debt-based Ponzi scheme that we reside in, which is the US dollar. Like, all the bad things of society, almost every single one of them, and I can't think of any one that wouldn't fit under this criteria. Every single bad thing in society right now exists because our money is broken.
Well, it's funny because far left people, and I have a lot of younger, former students that I work with, and they're very far left. And it's very funny, the thing that they have in common with Bitcoiners, and you wouldn't think that they have much in common, is they understand that one of the worst things the federal government ever did, the United States ever did, is leave the gold standard, because it allowed them, and I learned this from you, but I also learned it from them. They're mad because we have all these wars. We've had all these wars since the 50s, which was, even though we were still on the gold standard, the concept of war for profit started with the Korean War. And anybody who's read enough about history understands, yes, communism, blah blah blah. But there was also the corporations of, okay, God, we made all this money during World War II building planes and making bombs.
Manufacturing. We were manufacturing to support it.
The United States had rebuilt this country after the Great Depression. And they're like, wow, we have to keep having these wars because these wars are good for business. And that was led to Korea. I mean, not the only thing, but Vietnam was certainly part of that. And we went to Gulf twice. You can think of all these other ones, and not just American wars. Like, so they're very mad at the United States government because getting off the gold standard allowed them to just make up money so they could go and buy bombs and planes and all this other stuff. So it's very funny that there is this weird Venn diagram that overlaps a lot of philosophical with very far left young people. And Bitcoiners. There's why they're motivated to say what they say, and why some Bitcoiners are motivated to do what they do. It's just how the two different groups feel that what the solution is.
How about this? I'm watching a documentary on Netflix, and I never knew this because I don't really study it that much. Maybe it's not news to other people, but it was news to me. I'm watching this documentary on the hunt for Bin Laden. Okay, Hunt for Bin Laden on Netflix.
Oh yeah, yep.
And I think it was in I might get the years wrong, but it was in Bush's presidency. It was either 04 or 05. It was early on. We had Bin Laden cornered in the mountains, and we had ground support that were outnumbered by the ground support of the Taliban, but we had the exact location of where Bin Laden was and all of his people, and we were going to send in bombs in the rockets, and the CIA was running this operation, and they called to the White House and said, we're going to come in, we're going to send these rockets and bombs or whatever and bomb everything, but we need ground support to come in after to make sure that everything, that whoever's there, anybody that's left over, is captured if anybody survives. And they waited for word from the White House, and the White House says, this is a CIA operation. We want no part of it. That's the Bush administration saying this, right? So we could have had Bin Laden early, right? We don't get Bin Laden until what? Obama was president we got him in 10 or 12, or maybe it was sometime in somewhere 2010, 2012, at least half a decade or more later. Meanwhile, we did all that Afghanistan and all that Iraq wars, and then they just dragged on. But we had an opportunity to take that guy out, and the White House, who was so adamant on getting this guy, was like, no, that's where you guys do your stuff, but we're not bringing in any support. So we could have had an end to all that potentially all that conflict that came after that if we just would have done the job the right way the first time. And it's like you have an administration of a compromise administration, in my opinion, which was the Bush administration. I mean, if you know anything about that, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, Bush was looking for a vice president, and he went to Dick Cheney to help him look for a vice president. He's like, I found one. Who is it? Me. Yep. And then what happens? He's part of Halliburton, and look at Halliburton since Dick Cheney was president.
Yep. And during the Clinton administration, there was an opportunity to get Bin Laden, and they didn't do it because they were worried about how it would look politically.
Whose administration?
During Clinton, there was an opportunity they had too. They had him cornered too, but they had done they're basically their insiders guys. It was like, probably shouldn't do it. It's going to look bad. So there was another
because he did something during the Clinton. It was like he hit a warship or something.
Also, the warship plus the first bombing of the
93
first attempt on
World Trade Center.
The
World
World Trade
yeah.
Center, the one that was underneath in the bus, the train.
Was that they knew that was him too?
Oh yeah.
Was it?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it was ever public, but they knew, and it's definitely. Okay. I've seen some stuff about that. It's very funny too because I just happened to watch this, and I can't remember which one it was, but there's a Timothy Dalton James Bond movie where they're working with the Afghans and Pakistani, whatever it is, I don't remember now. But there's a guy in the movie that's like James Bond's buddy, who's the freedom fighter from that area, and the character is totally patterned after Bin Laden.
Is it?
Yeah, because we funded Bin Laden to fight.
Yeah,
we created Bin Laden.
Yeah,
and that's why I love that. I
Russia.
love that. There was a lot of money and guns spent to. Because when the Soviets were trying to take over that area, we were funding, through third parties. So, I mean, all of this goes back to, being off the gold standard because we can just make up money and Halliburton or whoever,
Speaking of making up money, we're going to get into our next story, which has been a very big story the last couple of days on Bitcoin X, and it's about MicroStrategy. I'm going to read this post, and then we'll kind of talk about it, and I will say before I read this, so full transparency, I'm not a MicroStrategy holder. I hold no MicroStrategy stock. I actually hold no stock period outside of any old 401ks that I have that are still active. I'm not a stock holder. I hold my value in Bitcoin. So there is probably some bias because I don't own stock and I don't own MicroStrategy. So there might be some of that may bleed into some of this, but I'm going to try to be as objective as possible when I talk through what's going on with MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy abandoned their 2-week-old commitment to not dilute below 2.5x MNAV yesterday, issuing new equity guidance. Here's what it means for shareholders in my view. The economics of the new guidance actually favor current MicroStrategy shareholders. They now have more dilution protection down to 1x versus 2.5x threshold, and below 1x MNAV buybacks kick in, essentially letting shareholders get Bitcoin exposure at a discount. However, what shareholders or potential investors are rightly upset about is the terrible optics. Breaking a clear commitment after 2 weeks signals either poor planning at best or desperation as their premium compresses. The new advantageous clause gives management broad discretion exactly when the premium is weakest. The deeper issue, MicroStrategy's strategy, depends on maintaining investor confidence to sustain the premium that enables their Bitcoin accumulation. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. Lower premium makes capital raising harder, which reduces confidence, which compresses the premium further. Without constant Bitcoin accumulation, the premium justification weakens. The framework itself is sound, but execution matters. In trying to give themselves more flexibility, they may have damaged the very trust premium their entire strategy depends on. Personally, I've never been a fan of MicroStrategy, just buy Bitcoin directly, ? But I do think this renewed and equity guidance is as bad as some are, as not as bad as some are making it out to be. I'm going to just give my thoughts. I want to be completely clear. I am not educated enough on the MicroStrategy ownership, stock, any of that, because I don't own it. So I've spent little time trying to understand it to speak on this extremely eloquently. So I'm only going to speak on it from my own perspective on things and how I think things are and look and why I feel the way that I feel. First of all, I think it's awesome to start out right out the gate what Michael Saylor did. I think it was brilliant. He took his money that was losing buying power, gaining nothing, and decided to buy Bitcoin back in 2020 and went on a Bitcoin strategy. Great, good, perfect, awesome. And then it accelerated, and here we are, 600 and something thousand Bitcoin later, and he's got MSTR, he's got Misty, he's got all these other derivative products that exist that people can buy, as well as owning MicroStrategy. And the Bitcoin that MicroStrategy owns is supposed to be, I guess, like if you own the shares of MicroStrategy, then you own part of the Bitcoin gains that they're getting. And to me, it only made sense to ever just own Bitcoin. Like, I want to own Bitcoin. I want to have the best, most pristine asset ever created, stack that, put it in self-custody, and just, do that. If I wanted to own stocks, I would own a Mag 7 stock, I guess. I mean, unless the ideology is that I own MicroStrategy because it's pro-Bitcoin and I want to diversify my Bitcoin portfolio, I guess. But you don't own Bitcoin when you own MicroStrategy. You can't. They're not paying you in Bitcoin dividends. You're not getting Bitcoin sent to you when you own MicroStrategy. You own a fiat-based product. MicroStrategy is a fiat system stock, and I'm not saying that like it's a knock. I mean, that's just what it is. And when you own MicroStrategy, you own fiat. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what it is. And I understand that people are trying to accelerate their fiat to be able to get more Bitcoin, and it's great and all that. But like when you get upset that Michael Saylor is doing, he's changing the rules as he goes along, I don't understand how anybody ever thought that all he would ever do is buy. At some point, he's going to have to sell some Bitcoin. And I know, like we say, never sell your Bitcoin. And he's even said it. And he's been one of the biggest cheerleading champions of saying never sell your Bitcoin. But he's he keeps diluting shares, creating more shares, more debt to buy more Bitcoin, which in theory is awesome. But at some point, like, shareholders are going to have to get paid because you're owning shares, you're going to sell shares, and there has to be some sort of fiat gain that comes from that. And you're eventually going to run out of being able to buy all this Bitcoin, and you're going to have to find other ways for your shareholders to get paid, and you're going to eventually have to sell some Bitcoin. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing when you're running a business. I mean, if you're buying 1,000 Bitcoin and you're only selling like maybe 30 or 40 Bitcoin to pay out shareholders and stuff, you're still net positive on how much you're buying. But I think that the long-term strategy of never selling Bitcoin for MicroStrategy is not going to last. And it was only a matter of time, I think, before we saw that they were going to have. They haven't sold yet, from what I can see, I guess. But like eventually, they're going to have to sell some Bitcoin because it's a fiat company. Like it. I mean, I understand it's a Bitcoin-based product, and they want to be a Bitcoin bank and all this stuff. But it's a fiat. It's in the fiat system. It's from what I'm understanding, going to be listed in the S&P 500. It's a fiat. It's a stock. It's fiat. That's what it is. I mean. Again, I mean, I'm not versed enough to like go in eloquently to speak about this, but I don't own stocks. It is a stock. It's a fiat stock that has Bitcoin backing it. But at the end of the day, like they have to make fiat decisions because it's a fiat product. That's kind of where I land on it. And I know, people might crush me in the comments that are way more understanding of how all this stuff works because they own it, because they're, they put the time in to study it. Again, like I said, to be fair, I don't own MicroStrategy. I don't have any of the stock. I haven't spent a ton of time trying to understand it. I do like the idea of the Bitcoin treasury companies, that companies are putting Bitcoin on their balance sheets. I think that's all good. But at the end of the day, when you're a company in the fiat-based U.S. debt Ponzi scheme, you're going to have to do U.S.-based debt Ponzi scheme things to continue to operate in that system. And they're going to have to do what they got to do. And to be mad at them for that is just not understanding what this all is, in my opinion. I'm not going to spend too much more time on that because I would do it a disjustice by continuing to try to speak on it because, like I said, I haven't done the time researching MicroStrategy or any of its derivatives to fully understand it because I don't own it. I buy Bitcoin. I own Bitcoin. I think you should own Bitcoin over everything else. And to me, it never made sense to go and buy MicroStrategy. Doesn't mean I'm right. It just means that that's the way that I see things, and that's my perspective on that. On to the next story. Max Kaiser. Let's go to Max's tweet first if we can. Max, as I predicted, one of the very few, inflation is heating up. If you know where to look and block out the fake stuff flashing bad signals that most people misinterpret as signaling the opposite. Morgan Stanley, what's today, the 21st, yesterday tweeted, says the Federal Reserve will not cut interest rates in 2025, which goes against what the markets are predicting, because like I said earlier, the markets are predicting 85% that they're going to be cutting rates at least 25 basis points in September. But Max retweeted Morgan Stanley, who's saying that that's not going to happen. And this post says, the Fed prints dollars, stable coins clone them. Both pretend to create demand for treasuries out of thin air. This isn't strength, it's entropy dressed as policy. Rates can't be cut because the system is trapped. Raise and debt implodes. Cut and confidence implodes. That's not a toolkit. That's the death spiral. Bitcoin is the first monetary system in history that doesn't need a printer, a bailout, or a permission slip. It runs on math, not politics. This isn't about interest rates. It's about the end of an era. Hashtag Bitcoin. I agree with every single line of that sentence. And I think, like I've said before, that eventually, hopefully in my lifetime, maybe after I'm gone, that we will run on a Bitcoin standard. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin will be the currency that we use to transact, but I think whatever monetary tool we use to settle transactions, to barter for goods and services, will be backed by Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is the scarcest asset, because Bitcoin is pristine money, because Bitcoin doesn't need a printer, a ballot, permission slip. It runs on math and not politics. Eventually, I think society will smarten up in the next couple of decades, and whatever tool we use to barter will be backed by Bitcoin, the same way that for 35 or 40 years we were on a gold standard and we backed all our money on gold. I truly believe that eventually will happen. I think it will take much longer than many of my cohorts believe. If you go into Bitcoin spaces on a daily basis, you'll hear many people say it's going to happen like next year or the next 5 years, and I just don't have that positive of an outlook or that much faith that the right people are going to be around now that will be able to make that happen. I think it's going to take a lot of time. I think it's going to be a change of ideology. That's kind of where I sit on that. But I think eventually we will, like I said, be on a Bitcoin standard, and my thesis is it's going to take some time. Hopefully it's in my lifetime. It's kind of where I sit on that. Okay, we don't want notifications on. Another tweet by the same guy. Am I following him? If I'm not, I should be. He tweeted a couple bangers the last couple of days. U.S. Treasury just bought back $4 billion of its own debt. Read that again. Yes, read it again. The issuer of the world's reserve currency is now in the market buying back its IOUs. One of the largest treasury buybacks in history. Translation, the system is eating itself. Liquidity black hole. Debt spiral feedback loop. Fiat Ouroboros. When the printer has to buy the promises it already made, the game isn't strong economy, it's end game mechanics. This isn't bullish or bearish. This is structural collapse disguised as policy. Bitcoin isn't an alternative. It's the exit door before the fire spreads. I really like that last statement, and that's kind of why I share this. Because a lot of times we'll talk about Bitcoin being the opt-out, Bitcoin being the alternative, Bitcoin being like a choice for it. It's like I truly believe, and again, I just got done saying 2 minutes ago that I think it's going to take some time, but I truly believe at some point in time it won't be a choice. It won't be an alternative. It'll just be what it is. It'll be how we fix all this mess. Because things are careening off of a cliff, and there's only so much printing you can do. There's only so much debt you can create. I mean, just think about in a 20-year span. Okay, like in the last 20 years. I mean, I'm old enough to remember, and Rich, you're old enough to remember talking about like a $4 trillion debt being created by the Bush administration, and that being just like catastrophic, and like Obama coming in and saying in the last couple of years he got the debt from 4 trillion to 7 trillion, and we got to stop this and that, and change, or whatever the hell his motto was. And then you see him come in, Obama, and he rackets up the debt. And then Trump comes in, he rackets up the debt. And then Biden comes in, he rackets up. It's like it doesn't matter. Like you're not voting. Like, again, not to get on my soapbox and talk about why I think voting is just ridiculous. You're not voting to fix anything because nobody has any intentions of fixing it. They think that we can just keep printing money, and we can just keep adding more money to the money supply and just racking up the credit card and print our way out of these problems. It's how we've been doing it for the last 20 years. That's why you see crazy people that you may think like me and others say Bitcoin goes up forever, because they're not going to stop printing money. It's evident. Like it's full stop. There is no stopping. Look at the last, from Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden, back to Trump, like those last 5 administrations, all they've done is continue to print. We had 9/11 happen. We had the great financial crisis happen. We had COVID happen. 3 great reasons and examples to keep those things going. You don't think there's going to be another crisis that's going to happen, and the only thing they need to know how to do is just to print more. So not only do we believe all the things that we believe about Bitcoin being perfect money, pristine, all that, they can't stop printing money. Because they can't stop printing money, everything priced in Bitcoin will continue to go down in Bitcoin terms, which means that the price of Bitcoin in nominal terms has to go up. Bitcoin price up, what it costs in nominal terms goes down, because the price of Bitcoin keeps going up forever in the line that I said probably about 35 minutes ago on this podcast. It goes up in a line just like this. It has its dips, it has its moving, but the trajectory continues like a plane to just go up and continue to ascend. And it continues to ascend forever because we don't know anything else but printing, because our money is backed by nothing. It's backed by nothing. They either have to make a decision and back it with something, or this thing just goes off a cliff. I mean, at what point? I don't know. I don't know if anybody's thought of this deeply enough, but at what point do we get in a position where the middle class no longer exists and people are working multiple jobs and can't pay any of their bills, and people can't own homes, and people are just like people that would traditionally have made good money are creating crimes just to survive. Like, that's where we're going. I mean, it seems crazy. Like,
and there's a lot of theories out there that is what they want to happen. That your government wants that, and I don't care in which party is. They both want this kind of society where there's a big portion, most of the country, just works for somebody and pays rent to somebody, and they just do what they're supposed to do. There's definitely a lot of deep space conspiracies that's the goal, to make how come this is not working like it used to, because then if it's working so bad, then they can justify getting rid of it and privatize it, and then the government, like they can sell that, and then those guys can get richer because now you're paying extra for this and this and that, and there's no safeguards. There's definitely no safeguards. There have been safeguards really, I don't know, I want to say since the 80s in terms of some of this stuff. And it's definitely, I'm not a big conspiracy guy, but there's a lot of times just like, you can understand why these types of theories make a lot of sense. And I don't know what they could back it on. And then when you talk to people just on the street, if the debt ever comes up, if you run into a party or whatever it is and the debt comes up, they're like, yeah, we just owe it to ourselves, or it's China and we're not paying China back. And what are they going to do? Invade us? Like, there's this weird mentality about most of the people in the United States that don't understand what the debt does to them directly. And but they think somehow, well, what are they going to do? We don't have to pay it back. What are they going to do? We'll just bomb them. Those are the conversations that you have with people that don't understand that the bigger that debt is, the harder that they have to work to make more money just to keep up with inflation, and they can't. It's impossible.
The debt,
it's going to become
the debt is being paid every day by us.
But it's
in cost of rising goods and services.
And it's the same way people just gave up and walked away from homes in the 2008 because they were like, there was no point trying to pay for that house. I'm just going bankrupt. I'm just going to go. And I know I can name 10 people that I knew that were in that boat that were like, it's better for me just to get out, go into bankruptcy. Then I'm just going to stop paying for this house. And I'm living in this house until they kick me out. And then I know people that lived in the house for over a year because the bank kept trying to get them to like, well, how about this? And I was just like, I'm just out. And I'm just going to start. I'm going to reset my financial button, and banks didn't know what to do with that.
Really good 2-minute and 38-second clip that's going to encompass everything we just talked about for the last 20 minutes. So I'm going to play this. Rich, I don't know if you've seen this. This is really good.
I've seen it.
You've seen it?
I have not seen this. I haven't seen much in the last.
America's gold was supposed to back the dollar. Leaving the gold standard was the most costly mistake we ever made.
What was so bad about gold?
It kept them honest, but they wanted power. Kid, folks today think this is just how life's supposed to be.
What do you mean?
Back in my day, one job could feed a family. My mother stayed home, father worked, and we ate together every night. Didn't realize how good we had it. After the World War, they promised gold-backed dollars, but they broke that promise. They printed paper backed by nothing, funded wars we couldn't afford and shouldn't have been involved in. But France caught on and sent a warship to get back their gold. Truth is, if more countries followed, our vaults would be empty and game over.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold.
Turns out, when you fake the money, everything else follows, and you screw the next generation over. And it snowballs, kid. Prices shot up, paychecks didn't, life got tougher, and nobody knew why. We tried raising our kids the old way, but we didn't have the time or the money.
So you outsource parenting?
Yeah, I guess you could say we did. Government schools raised them, and the TV taught them bad morals. They learned debt, not savings. Bought houses they couldn't afford. Played video games. Gambling, antidepressants, and crimes. Families fractured. Divorce rates doubled. Birth rates plummeted. Things got so bad, people started financing Chipotle.
Financing a burrito?
Yeah, it's getting bad. Obesity. People eating cheap slop instead of real food. We got softer, sicker, and lazier. A nation in decline. But it didn't happen overnight. When Nixon left the gold standard, we traded sound money for a lifetime of debt.
How will they ever pay it back?
I don't think they plan to. Both sides keep spending like there's no tomorrow and leaving the bill to your generation. We didn't get it right, but you've still got a chance. So, take the reins, kid. Hold your ground and don't give up on sound money.
Pretty amazing, huh? That was a pretty good clip. I mean, when I watched it the very first time, it gave me goosebumps. Like it's
a lot of good stuff in there. There's a couple things that are a bit reachy, but there's definitely a lot of 80 to 90% of that is right, in my opinion. I definitely like that. I guess the question it comes down to is, let's assume there was will somebody became president someday or whatever and had the will to change it. How hard would it be for the United States to go back onto some type of base standard, gold, silver, whatever it is? Like, what could they do it? I don't even know how they could do it. Is it just impossible at this point? Because you don't have enough stuff to back what you have.
I think it's almost impossible, and I think that the only way that we will, it's like anything else. When does change ever happen? Like I'll give you an example. When you got like 3 or 4 roadways that like converge, and there's no stoplight, and you're just like, why the hell does this road not have a stoplight? And you know when the stoplight comes in?
Somebody dies.
When there's a death and some major catastrophe happens, and they're kind of forced to make a move.
Yep.
So I think that similar to that ideology, that's probably going to be what happens to our economy and the global economy is that, and I think 2008, this is why Bitcoin exists. Like, I think 2008 in an alternate universe was that. I think in an alternate universe, we let everything collapse and we reset. But because we decided at the last minute and the people that were involved had made the decision that they didn't want to be the congressmen and the presidents and the people in power that were responsible for a global collapse and a reset, that they decided to kick the can down the road. And I think eventually there'll be a point in time where we'll run out of ability to kick the can down the road, and it'll just be an explosion, a financial explosion. And that will be when the shift happens. And I think, like, as it gets worse and worse, like when all these things continue to happen, we're going to get to a point where we can't continue to go on, and it'll be a forced move. We're not going to get a president that's going to come in, or we're not going to get a Congress that's going to come in and agree to say, hey, let's push the reset button, just start us all over again and back our money with something, stop printing. And you know what I mean? Because I mean, our deficits, like I think we spend like 7 or 8 trillion a year. We bring in like 5.5 in like taxes, and we got to print the 2.5 trillion or whatever that we're short. Like there's some programs in there that we've gotten used to that aren't. Elon came in and realized how hard it is to cut. You know what I'm saying? Like, people were saying, oh, he's going to come in and cut Medicaid, or he's going to cut like all these important programs. And he didn't necessarily come in with that plan, but we spend so much on a lot of things that we've kind of grown to need that it's just not that easy to just say, oh, let's just stop spending $4 or $5 trillion and just back everything with Bitcoin or back everything with gold and make sure we spend dollar for dollar with everything that we, you know what I mean? Like, it isn't just that simple. So the long way to answer your question, like, I don't think we're going to have somebody come in and just make the decision and run on. And I don't think anybody's going to run on that and then actually implement. You heard Trump say he wanted to come in and spend less and get that. All that's disingenuous. They all say that. They never have an intention to do it, and it's too hard of a endeavor to really do. So I think it happens when we have a global collapse, and I don't know what that's going to be, because we saw a 9/11 happen. We saw, the housing market crash. We saw COVID, and none of those brought us to the brink. So I don't know what it's going to be that's going to happen. That's going to get us past the point where we can't come back from it, and we have to back our money with something and push the reset button. So no, I don't know. I mean, it's crazy to fathom, but I think the likelihood of us getting past $100 trillion of debt is far more likely than us going in the other direction at this point. If I had to bet money on us getting to 100 trillion or us erasing the debt, I would say we get to 100 trillion. And on the trajectory that we're going, if you do the math and how we're accelerating, we're adding, what are we adding? 2 or 3 trillion a year, maybe.
Yep.
And that's It's not, if 2 or 3 trillion would be 10 or 15 years to get to 100. If it was, you say, let's say 3 times 10 would be 30.
On that too.
Yeah.
Because it can't stay at 2 and 3. 2 becomes 2.5.
Yeah.
2.5 becomes 3.
So
10 becomes
10, and then what does that coincide with? What we just talked about opening up the podcast.
Yep.
People are going to be retiring and not have enough money. And what's going to have to happen? The government's going to have to step in and help fund people's retirements. That may be the catalyst. As we talk this through, that might be what the reset is. It might be my generation retiring without enough money, looking to the government and having to blow the whole thing up.
And I do think that, you've got a class of younger people right now that are in their 20s and they have no voice. And as they become older and become a little bit more influential, and start running for county this and congressman this and that type of stuff, you will get this younger generation, regardless of which party they happen to choose, they are going to start to become more active just because they're going to feel they have to. There's definitely a lot more younger people they haven't been this politically engaged, whether it's because of a TikTok or whatever it is. They're a lot more engaged than they were when we were in high school. I think you'd have to go back to like the 60s or maybe Vietnam high school era to have kids that were so engaged politically. So that did make a lot of changes.
That's true, but the information they're getting is bad.
True, I think, but a lot of people have just their own. You're right. I agree with that. But I think just the fact that they're living it themselves.
Interest level is higher.
They're living it themselves.
Interest level is higher.
Yeah.
But the information coming in is poor.
Right.
All right, couple of charts to end the podcast on. Robert Infra, great follow on X. Daily reminder: home prices and gold are at record low prices. Total civilian income as share of M2 money supply is down 35% over the past 20 years. The original tweet: U.S. housing affordability hits record low. And then back here, this is the original tweet here is, this is what's happening. More money printing means more taxes, higher cost of living, and no time to be spent with your family, which that video that we showed really drove home. There's only one way out, but it will probably take another 10 years before the majority embrace it like I have. This is what's been happening. More money printing means more taxes, higher cost of living. The only way, and he kind of just said the same thing. But yeah, I mean, maybe the timeline is 10 years, and maybe I'm being conservative to say that it won't happen in my lifetime. Maybe 10 to 15 years when my generation is at that threshold of being 60 and retiring. Maybe that's when we get the reset. I don't know. Maybe more people adopt Bitcoin. Get I don't have a lot of faith in, because I don't think the overwhelming population is very bright. And just understand that stacking some Bitcoin is the way, and the price goes up high enough where people can more. See, here's the thing: for more people to own Bitcoin, the price has to be significantly higher. Does that make sense, Rich?
Yep.
Because the people that own 1,000 Bitcoin, 10,000 Bitcoin, 50,000 Bitcoin, they have to be incentivized to sell. there's going to be a price that's going to incentivize them, and then they'll distribute them. And then when the price is so high, you can have like one person owning one Bitcoin at 113,000. If the price goes up to 500,000, that one Bitcoin that person sells for 500,000 can now be owned by potentially like hundreds or thousands of people that own parts of that Bitcoin. And then the Bitcoin network grows because more people have ownership of the Bitcoin. So the price goes up, people sell, and it gets redistributed. That's why like people are like, oh my God, like so-and-so having a ton, like everybody's got a price. Not everybody's going to hold forever. And even we saw this cycle, some of the OGs have been selling their coins. The people that own thousands of coins have been selling, 10 or 20 or 30 coins along the way and redistributing those coins, and more people are owning them. Instead of one person owning, that one token, they're selling it, and then it gets distributed because more people come in that can't afford to buy it at 100K, but I can buy 1,000 here, 500 there, 10,000 there, and that one token gets distributed to multiple more people. More people get orange pilled, the network grows, and then that's how this thing, in the next 10 years can be an opportunity for something different. All right. Another reminder before we sign off for the day. In 2 days will be the Emerge-a-thon. I will going to write a comment in the thread with the channel that you can watch on. It will not be on my socials. It will be on the Emerge Creator socials. It's a great event that we're doing. It's going to be a 24-hour podcast-a-thon. There's going to be all kinds of different podcasts from Rich. You can kind of speak to what'll be on besides the.
Yeah, there's a little bit of all. It's actually just about every podcast is participating. So there's a movie one, there's fandom ones, there's lifestyles, there's sports, there's Bitcoin, obviously, and just there's a bunch of different. Basically every podcast is going to be represented. Just tuning in on YouTube it's Emerge_media creators on YouTube, and plus you can donate to one of our local Niagara Falls hometown charities that supports homeless and veterans and stuff, the Niagara Gospel Mission. So we're just doing a little collection. So whatever we raise, and it's like it goes right to him. It's not even my QR code; it's his QR code. So if you scan it, you're helping out a great local organization. And yeah, it's really just to have fun and celebrate all the people that are putting in all this time trying to create content, whether it's you, whether it's the other guys. Everybody's just trying to talk about what they're passionate about, and that's really what we're hoping to do this weekend. So yeah, tune in. It should be fun. So.
Yep, looking forward to it. And as the universe kind of worked out, it will be the 100th episode of the Defion Productions podcast. So we're going to celebrate. We're going to spend our hour celebrating. I'm going to try to bring on some guests, and we're just going to kind of talk about, it's going to be a little bit about the journey from start to finish, or not finish, from start to present of, what I was thinking when I made the podcast and how we got here. And I hope to have Troy on. I reached out to him. I'm hoping that he jumps on for that podcast. One of my buddies right before we went on that was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, he agreed to come on. I'm going to reach out to a couple other friends that don't even really do the Bitcoin thing, just to see if I can get them to maybe StreamYard in and just like kind of celebrate with me the 100th episode of this podcast. As Rich brought up to me last week or the week before, not many podcasts get to the 100 episodes, so I want to make sure we savor that and we celebrate that. So please tune in, and like he said, it's going to be for a great cause, a local homeless shelter that does a lot of good things in the community for people in our city. We're going to be supporting every dollar that's donated goes straight to them, straight to that good cause. And again, as always, 99 times in a row, soon to be 100. Don't trust, verify. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in 2 days.